Hello and welcome to Reporters, the show that brings you the best of France 24 reporting from around the world. Now, burying the dead is an important human ritual across many cultures and religions, and sadly, decades of violence in the Middle East mean that there such ceremonies take place all too often. But what about those who don't get the chance to say goodbye to their loved ones? France 24's reporters have been meeting the families of some Palestinian fighters, including, controversially, families of suicide bombers. They say the remains of their relatives never came home and that their bodies are being kept by the Israeli army. Well, I'll be speaking to them in just a moment, but first let's take a look at the report.
The 12th of August 2010 will be remembered at Arouri village in the West Bank. For the first time in 60 years of conflict, a family has managed to have a Palestinian corpse returned from one of Israel's so-called cemeteries of numbers. 34 years ago, Mashhour Arouri's body was confiscated by the Israeli army. It was given an ID number and kept in a secret cemetery. Mashhour was a fighter. He was shot by the Israeli army during a guerrilla operation in 1976.
Today, we have taken off Mashhour Arouri's corpse, the number 539 he was recorded under in the cemetery of numbers. And we have given him back his name. Mashhour Talab Awad Saleh Arouri, the Palestinian man, the Palestinian fighter who is honoured here today.
2 weeks after the funeral, Mashhour's mother, Amina, is relieved. Her son's body is now right next door at the village's cemetery. She visits him often. She had his gravestone made when he died 34 years ago.
This stone has existed ever since he became a martyr. We hid it from the Israelis when they came. The Israelis used to come to the house to punish us. They didn't know this stone was for Mashhour. If they had known, they would have destroyed it. Thank God today we have the stone and we have the body. We have everything we wanted. It's a gift from God.
Jamil was 5 years old when his brother was killed. He only has a few childhood memories of him, but has regretted not being able to honour his grave.
Confiscating corpses is an immoral policy. The dead are dead. This is punishment for both the living and the deceased. This is a policy of revenge more than anything else. There's no law that allows anybody to retain a corpse as a prisoner for decades.
Issam is in charge of the national campaign for the recovery of the bodies. It's his organization that defended Mashhour's family's claim before the Israeli Supreme Court.
It's the first case we've managed to solve. It's 34 years old. As you can see here, we have another 320 to work on. We have evidence that most of these bodies are buried in Israel's so-called cemeteries of numbers.
Nobody knows exactly how many bodies are held by the Israelis. Mashhour's case has given a lot of hope to the families, even though the Supreme Court never actually ruled on it.
The Israeli army was afraid that the Supreme Court might rule that it had to give the corpse back to the family. That would have set a legal precedent that could have been applied to all the bodies. Instead, they negotiated a deal and admitted they had the body.
According to the forensic scientists' report, Mashhour's body was exhumed from a cemetery known as Adam's Bridge. We filed a request with the Israeli army to visit the cemetery and interview the person in charge. Headquarters refused, but instead sent us this statement that confirms that they released Mashhour's remains. We decide to go and search for the Adam's Bridge Cemetery of Numbers. It is located in an Israeli military zone along the Jordanian border near Jericho. The road that leads to Adam's Bridge appears abandoned.
Excuse me, do you know of a cemetery for a Palestinian fighter around here?
Yes, I know there's a cemetery here. The elders talk about it. They say that the cemetery is about 2 kilometers from here near the bridge, close to the border. The Israelis used to bring corpses here and bury them with excavators. But you can't go there. There's constant surveillance and patrols 24/7. And even if you got there, you can't see the cemetery. It's really inside the zone.
We approach the entrance of the military zone discreetly. Filming is prohibited. Adams Bridge Cemetery of Numbers is invisible. It rests somewhere behind this barbed wire fence. We decide to leave the West Bank and head towards Israel. We have an interview with Mohammed Baraki in Nazareth. This Israeli Arab Knesset member has been trying to get the government to comment about the captive corpses. He has already filed questions to the defense minister, but has had no reply.
We've been trying to raise this issue at the Knesset, but I'll be honest with you, discussing this subject is like trying to debate matters relating to Israeli nuclear weapons. The military behave as if they were above the law, Israeli law, international law, and if necessary, above the rulings of the Supreme Court.
Mr. Barake shows us the location of a second cemetery of Numbers near a place called the Daughters of Jacob's Bridge in Galilee. To guide us there, he recommends we go with Suleiman Fakheldin. He is in charge of the research department of Al-Marsad, a human rights NGO based in the Golan Heights.
This is the cemetery. This area here, that's surrounded with barbed wire, is the cemetery of Numbers of the Daughters of Jacob's Bridge.
Suleiman knows this cemetery well. He was part of the team that discovered it back in 1985.
When we came here in the first place, it looked abandoned. There was no sign that it was a cemetery. There was no barbed wire, it was open. We found an opened grave with a corpse wrapped in a sheet that read Israeli Ministry of Health.
At the time, this discovery caused a scandal. The army hurried to make the cemetery look official. They fenced it with barbed wire, numbered the graves, and added a sign that read Cemetery for the Enemy Dead.
In 2003 or 2004, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, there was an exchange with the Hezbollah. The military rabbis came and dug the bodies up.
In the past, the Israelis have indeed used the captive corpses as a bargaining chip with the Lebanese Hezbollah. In this footage dating back to 2008, you can see Israeli forensics in white uniforms digging up bodies from a cemetery of Numbers to give them back to their families. Suleiman has heard of numbered graves hidden in a cemetery named Shahita located near the Arab village of Wadi Hammam in Israel. We continue our investigation together. This is Suleiman's first visit here. At a glance, Wadi Hammam's Muslim cemetery appears normal, but as we explore the lowest part of it, we discover anonymous graves. Work has been done. Right next to the site, we find numbered plates. For Suleiman, this is evidence that the Israeli army has buried nameless corpses here.
Judging by the size of these graves, I reckon there must be more than one corpse in each one.
In the village, this cemetery of Numbers is a taboo. Diab Daleika is the only witness ready to talk to us. He was there when the Israeli military came and buried the bodies.
I think there must be between 50 and 70 corpses here in Shahita. Every time they brought 7 or 8 bodies. Once I remember they brought 12. Tiberias police used to come and talk to the elders. Then they started to dig holes, big holes. For instance, they said, "Today we have 6. They dug one grave and then put large boxes in it, one next to the other. I saw them, and then they cover them up with soil. I was around 10 years old at the time. I used to bring them soil and stones to help out."
The bodies held by Israel don't all date back 30 years. In 2002, Ayat Akras, a young 17-year-old Palestinian suicide bomber, blew herself up in this supermarket near Jerusalem. 2 Israeli civilians were killed in the attack, the supermarket security guard and a 17-year-old girl named Rachel Levy. For the last 9 years, her mother, Abigail, has come and visited her grave every Friday.
I'm cleaning every week, every Friday. I really don't want them to receive her bones. I rather have, them to another, place. Put them in the cemetery, okay, but not to her parents. Their parents don't deserve to have even their hair bones. You understand me?
Suicide bomber Ayat's parents live in Bethlehem in the West Bank. At the time, they discovered what their daughter had done on television. They have been asking for her body ever since the attack, in vain.
It hurts me. All religions command that bodies of prisoners and martyrs be given back to their families. Our children are martyrs. Why are they not given back to their parents to be buried with dignity at home?
After Ayat's attack, the Israelis took revenge on the family. Mohammed's 3 sons were put in prison and his house was destroyed. Sometimes his wife Hadra thinks of those who were killed by her daughter, especially Rachel's family.
They're victims, but we are also victims. She is a mother, just like myself, and yes, I have thought of her. I met the mother of the Israeli martyr, and I told her, you have your daughter, you have buried her, and you can visit her. I am deprived of my daughter.
Like the hundreds of families of the captive corpses, Ayat's parents have been struck twice. Once when they lost their child, and a second time when they never had a chance to bury her. Hadras dreams that one day her daughter will rest in a place like this one, the Martyrs' Cemetery in Jenin. But as long as the conflict lasts, a loophole in international law allows Israel to detain the dead bodies of its enemies.
Well, joining me now here in the studio are James Andre and Liana Saleh. Thank you both for being with us today. Now, first of all, it has to be made clear, Liana, that you are related to one of the fighters featured in that film. How important is this fight to get the bodies back for you and your family?
Yes, indeed, Laura. Actually, I belong to Mashhour's family. He's my uncle, and he died in 1976 while leading a guerrilla operation against the Israeli army, and whose body was given back recently. I wasn't born then, actually, but I witnessed the suffering of the family, and especially my grandma, who was not able to retrieve her son for 35 years.
Now, James, tell us, is Israel actually breaking the law in keeping these bodies?
Well, actually, technically, they're not breaking the law. This is kind of what we see at the end of the story, that it's a bit of a loophole, because indeed, the Geneva Convention clearly states that bodies of fighters must be given back to their relatives at the end of a conflict. And so what happens is the Israeli lawyers say that they're entitled to keep the bodies. On the other hand, the lawyers of the families, they say that basically the Geneva Convention was designed for shorter conflicts, not ongoing conflicts that go on for 60 years, and that the bodies should be given back. So what happens, in fact, it's every case is different, and in fact, Israel has to motivate the fact that if they gave the body back, it would be a threat to their security. So this is where we stand right now. And indeed, they are entitled to keep those bodies as long as the conflict isn't finished.
Now, you didn't get a response, as it were, from the IDF or the Israeli government. You got a statement, as we saw in your report. So we don't really know what their reasoning is behind keeping these bodies, but one might assume that they're doing it to discourage suicide bomb attacks. Might that be the case?
So indeed, that is one of the parameters. I mean, the idea is it's the martyrdom culture that runs in the Middle East and in the Arab countries. They don't want people to celebrate the return of these bodies. They don't want people to celebrate the suicide bombers, etc. So that is part of the reply. But the main reply that we got, because we've spoken to a lot of people around the country, including lawyers, etc., they often talk about the bargaining chip phenomenon, because we did already see the Israelis give bodies back to the Hezbollah as a bargaining chip in exchange for some bodies of Israeli fighters who died in Lebanon, and that actually spawned a huge celebration on the border, which was very shocking for the Israeli public opinion. And indeed, the public opinion in Israel is, of course, very hostile to the fact of giving these bodies back.
Now, Liana, I'll come back to you. As peace negotiations continue, we're in another round of direct peace talks. Are the people you've spoken to and the people you know, are they hopeful that Israel might release more bodies?
Actually, the release of Mashhour's body gave hope to many Palestinian families that they might get back the corpses of their beloved ones. Other thing, there's now more awareness in the Palestinian society and the Palestinian Authority actually to put this subject, the captured of corpses, in the negotiations table with the Israelis and the Palestinians.
All right, Liana Saleh and James Andre, thank you both very much indeed for joining us and for bringing us your report. Thanks to you for watching. That's it for this edition of Reporters. Stay tuned.